The purpose of adaptive learning obviously is to survive. Not to thrive, but to survive. And the attitude is always defensive. When there is adaptive learning, you are always in a defensive mode because you're in a survival mode. But there's another kind of learning, and it's called generative learning. Generative, generate, to create. It's a creative kind of learning. And it's based on not on wanting to avoid pain in the future or avoid danger in the future. It's based on curiosity. It's based on openness. Where adaptive learning uses blame to succeed or to survive. Generative learning uses accountability, and I'll go into more detail in just a moment. So let's look at the positional problem solving or non-learning organization. So we start with a problem at the top. Now think of your department. Think of what happens when there's a problem. That problem probably always, certainly usually, engenders fear in somebody. Because a problem means that someone didn't do their job. Someone let something go wrong. So it engenders fear. That fear leads to blame. Why? Because if it looks like I'm going to be blamed, I'm going to blame. She did it, the librarian. I saw her do it. It wasn't my fault, it was her fault. So blame comes naturally out of fear. And what happens when you blame someone? What happens when you get blamed? You get defensive. It's human nature. We see blame as an attack. It is in our DNA to become defensive when we are attacked. The math is simple. Defensiveness leads to denial. I didn't do it. Wasn't my fault. Denial leads to distorted and inadequate information, which leads to ineffective action, which leads to no learning. If what you do doesn't work, there's no learning. And of course, then that just leads to bigger problems. And it goes around and around. And you can start seeing why those problems keep coming back and back and back and back. And they're never solved because nothing has been learned. And of course, the fuel is fear. If you can see down at the bottom there in the dark part, it says, no learning can take place in the space of blame. No creative learning, only defensive learning or adaptive learning. The problem is dealt with uncertainty, with openness, with curiosity, so that we don't say, who did this? Who's to blame for this? We say, what happened? What actually happened? We ask ourselves the question, what happened and how can we learn from it? It's because we don't want this to happen again. We haven't pointed the finger at anybody. When you deal with a problem that way, and some of you are saying now, yeah, but sometimes someone is to blame. And I'd like to propose to you that no one is ever to blame. And sometimes people are responsible. In fact, always people are responsible. But there's a difference between the word blame and between the word responsibility. Blame is pejorative. Blame says you are wrong and bad stuff is going to happen to you because of it. Blame creates defensiveness. People will not own up to what they did when they're defensive. It's in our DNA. People will own up to what they did if we say, wow, let's examine this together. Let's see what went wrong.